This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, all of you. So we were discussing the informed consent process. So we have discussed how it has to be done and what all things has to be explained to the participant before they are added on to the study. So the informed consent document has got two parts. The informed consent document has got two parts. One is the participant information sheet or patient information sheet and the informed consent form. And in the participant information sheet, all the essential information that is going to affect the participant's decision to participate will be present in their own local language, in simple, without using any scientific terms. It should be there. And after explaining all the aspects, the participant has to sign on the informed consent form. So, and a copy of both has to be given to the participant, and the original needs to be archived by the sponsor or the researcher. So we also discuss the essential information that what all information has to be given to the prospective research participants, and we discuss the essential elements as well as the additional elements. So the essential elements included like all the information pertaining to the research that is very important in making decision. And in that we can see that the first statement itself should be that that it is a research and why it is conducted, how long it has to be conducted, all the risk identified, and what benefits and what harm is involved, and the contact details. All these are essential. It must be there. It is mandatory in all participant information sheet, or it has to be explained to the participant very well. So they are the essential things. Then we can see, according to the nature of the study, certain additional elements also needs to be added to the participant information sheet. So if we are going to conduct research on a new medication, and where there is already some good medications are available, then we have to inform the patient regarding all the other therapy that we are withdrawing them from. So according to the nature of the study, certain additional elements are also there. As you can see here, like HIV patients, and if the participants are HIV patients, then there is chance that there are chance of social stigmatizing conditions. So that also has to be explained, and we need to give them counseling, etc. So you have to remember, there are this essential elements of informed consent document, where no matter what kind of research, all these information should be there. It is mandatory. Then there is the additional elements. According to the nature of the study, some of the information has to be included. So there are two parts that you have to remember. Then we can see that in case of certain studies, we are collecting samples. So regarding how the samples will be handled after the study, that also needs to be explained to the patient. So whether it will be used for any other further studies, so such things also has to be included. So that is the third part. Then the researcher's responsibility. The basic responsibility of the researcher is to educate the participant according to his needs. So we can see here, there may be patients with some physical disabilities, neurological disability, mental problems. So according to their need, you have to reach to them, whatever the information that is important has to reach the patient. So the researcher has to take maybe some measures, such as in case of blind participant, we have to use this braille method. So such things are there. Then the researcher should give some time for the participant to think about. Then another important thing is, researcher has to ensure that like even if the participant withdrew from the study, their relationship will not be affected in any way. the patient will be still receiving all the benefits like how it was before. The same way the patient will be considered. That assurance should be given by the researcher. Then there are also certain situations where the researcher understands that the participant is illiterate, where he cannot understand this proper. The researcher should ensure that the participant is competent enough, and if not competent, then he has to explain everything to a legally acceptable representative, LAR, who is competent enough. And if both legally acceptable representative as well as the participant, if both are not literate, then an impartial witness should be present, and if this impartial witness can be any person who is not, like, only once this condition is there, he or she should not be related to the study. It can be any, maybe a patient in the, maybe another patient in the hospital. So impartially literate person should be there, and the researcher has to make sure that all three are present, and the consent process has to happen, and video or audio recording also can be done. Then we will see, like today we'll see like when we have to go for this reconsent. Then even research related, for all research related injury, the researcher has to make provision to provide some compensation for those. Then documentation. So after educating the participant, after obtaining the participant's willingness to be a part of the study, the participant has to sign on it. So we have seen that for the informed consent document, there are two parts: patient information sheet and the informed consent form. So on the informed consent form, the participant, after going through the patient information sheet and after hearing all the explanation from the researcher, after clarifying all the doubts, the participant has to sign on the informed consent form. And in the informed consent form, it will be written that, like, I have been explained very well on the study aspects, on the, like, what all aspects are done in this research. I am very well aware about it, and maybe such a statement will be there, and the participant has to sign on it. So it means that once the participant signs on the informed consent form, it means that it is an informed consent. Informed means the participant is very well aware about what the research is about. So that is the meaning of it. Once the participant has signed the informed consent form, it means that he or she knows all the aspects regarding the research that is going to affect his or her decision to participate. Then again, in case the participant is incompetent, like medically or legally, to give the consent, then legally acceptable representative's consent must be documented. So medically means we can see many conditions such as any neurological condition, mental disability, then physical disability, blindness or deafness, or such things. In any way, if they are incompetent, then there should be a legally acceptable representative. Or if they are not legally not in a way, like for example in pediatric patients, so we can see that they are not ready to give the consent. In such situation, the parents can be the legally acceptable representative. And so if the participant is incompetent, then the legally acceptable representative consent should be obtained. And the third point also we discussed: if both the participant and LAR are illiterate, then an impartial literate witness should be there, and this impartial witness should not be a relative of the participant, and he or she should not be in any way connected to the conduct of research. So impartial literate witness. So impartial literate witness means this person should not be related to the patient, as well as should not be connected with the research also. He can be some other person who is maybe example is any one patient in the hospital. Then if the participant cannot sign, then the thumb impression will do. Then once the participant signs, the researcher also is administering this consent, he also has to sign and date the consent form. So it is important. So when you are asked to write about the documentation of the informed consent process, you have to include all these points, like the participant signature, then the researcher signature, and also it is important that they also put date. They also date the consent form. Then if in case of the institutionalized individuals means, like for example, if the study is done in a school, then the study may be done in students, maybe college students, like after the age of 18. So if the study is done in a college, then in addition to the individual or a legally acceptable representative, the permission should be obtained from the head of that institution. So we can see the permission of the principal should be obtained. So so in the documentation form, all these aspects should be there, or in the informed consent form, all these should be there. So first and foremost, it is important that the prospective participant should sign, and this sign indicates that he is informed about all the aspects of the study. Like he has understood it very well and he is willing to participate. That is important. So his sign means that. Then what all additional things has to be obtained if the participant is incompetent. So here you can see incompetent. If the participant is incompetent to give the consent, then legally acceptable representative will do, and they have to sign on it. And if both legally acceptable representative and participant is illiterate, we have to have this impartial witness. That person has to sign. Then if participant cannot sign, then thumb impression can be taken. Then the researcher also has to sign as well as date the document. Then in case if it is happening in an institution, then the institution head signature also must be obtained. So these are the documentation part. Then maybe in some research, if, if uh, the spouse signature also may be required. So it depends upon the nature of the research. So sometimes if spouse signature is also required, then that also need to be obtained. Then in case of a genetic research, where the research is done on a family, then even some of the other family members signatures or the details also has to be recorded. Then then online consent also is fine. So for example, we are doing some survey and we can obtain the online consent, and the researcher has to ensure that the privacy of the participant and privacy and confidentiality of the participant related data is maintained, because uh, we can see that maybe for example one online research study is like maybe okay, online maybe most of the time the Okay. So in case of online research, uh, the participant will be always worried whether their identity will be disclosed or not. So in that consent form, it has to be specifically written that whatever data is being collected, it will be held in confidence. So such assurance should be there in case of online consent. So that is one of the researchers' responsibility, because whenever some online research is going on, the participants will be so reluctant because they will be worried whether their data will be shared, because they are not seeing there's like without proper communication, without face-to-face interview, they'll not be having this confidence that whether they can trust this person or not. So it is important that for online consent, they have to ensure, the researcher also has to give extra effort to ensure the participants that their privacy and confidentiality will be maintained. For maybe like for certain research also, we can see that research is this online collection of data is very convenient. For example, maybe if they are dealing with some sensitive issues, like maybe like girls or ladies will, or even young adults, they will not be revealing, like if some research is going on about how they are sex before marriage, or uh, maybe about affairs, such kind of some behavioral research if they are doing. So if such research are done, then if we are giving the advertisement, so nobody will be turning up for a research or for an interview, for a face-to-face interview. So without disclosing their identity, without seeing face-to-face, maybe the person will be able to tell more. So for such kind of research, online research is important, or online research is more effective. So the participant will be revealing more, or the data that will be obtained from online research for such sensitive issues will be more reliable. So in that case, online consent has to be obtained. So in case of online consent, what the researcher has to be like researcher has to again ensure the privacy and confidentiality of the participants. So these are the document, like what all things has to be remembered for like when we go for documenting the informed consent process. Then there is something called as electronic consent, so where the researcher will be using the electronic media. So they can use so electronic media also, like through this media also we can provide them the information, the patient information sheet can be provided through electronic media, and they can read it, they can understand it, maybe through video conference. The researcher can educate them, and it also can be documented. Nowadays we can say we can see that the signature and all can be given online. So even the electronic media can be used for this consent purpose. So in that case, we are using text, graphics, audio, video, podcast, then in some websites where we can interact with the participants, and through these media we can explain them the aspects of the study, and even the documentation can be done, even from the participants or also from the legally acceptable representative. So one condition is that the principal investigator or his or her designee should supervise the whole process. So that is one condition when we are planning to use the electronic consent. Either the principal investigator should be there, or he has to delegate this duty to some other person. So his or her designee should be present in the whole process. So they must supervise the whole process. That is one condition. So this electronic consent is also possible. Then another condition is that whatever we are using, the data, the text, graphics, audio, video, all these has to be all these has to get approval from the ethical committee. So how we are doing and what all things we are using to convince not convince, what all things we are using to educate the patient. So that has to be reviewed. All these tools must be reviewed and approved by the ethical committee before it is used for the study. So electronic consent is also possible, where we right from the whole process can be done electronically. So that also can be done. Only two condition is that the participants, the principal investigator or his designated person should be supervising the whole thing. Then all the things that will be used has to be reviewed by and approved by the ethical committee. And one more another thing is the participant, if they are comfortable only, we have to go for it. So if they indicate some lack of comfort, then it is not a good idea. So electronic method is also there, but we have to, the investigator or his designee should be supervising. Ethical committee review and approval should be obtained. Then the participant should be willing, or he should not be uh, he should not he should be comfortable with the electronic method. Then we can also see that for certain researchers we don't require this consent from the participant. There are some of the research which doesn't require the consent from the participants. You can see that if the research is involving less than minimal risk. So regarding this risk we discussed in the previous chapters. So if the less than minimal risk means like it should be as if like there should not be any risk other than the participant may come across in his daily routine life. So for everyone in their daily routine life, there is some risk. So that's that same risk, even if this participant is included in the study, if there is no additional risk associated with being part of the study, so that is less than minimal risk. So the researcher can, whoever is doing the research, they can apply to the ethical committee to for a waiver of consent. Waiver of consent means uh, uh, not requirement. Consent cannot like without consent the participants can be included in the study. So that is waiver of consent. If there is and the condition is that the research should involve less than minimal risk to the participants. So if the research is having less than minimal risk to the participants, then the researcher can apply for a waiver of consent. Waiver of consent means without getting their consent, we can include them in the study. And they have to ensure that this waiver will not adversely affect the rights and welfare of the participant. When in which all situation the ethical committee will grant this waiver of consent. So we can see that the research cannot practically be carried out without the waiver, and the waiver is scientifically justified. Some studies, if we explain everything to the participants, then the outcome will not be that reliable. For certain things has to be like withheld. Certain information should be withheld from the participants. So if we are like obtaining the consent, like some information may not be given to the participants. So if we are educating the participants regarding that, then when we do the questionnaire or when we do the analysis, the result will not be, the outcome will not be appropriate, or the desired outcome will not be obtained. So in such studies, the waiver of consent can be obtained. Then retrospective studies. So in retrospective studies means we are just obtaining the data, like maybe already interventions are done, like hospitalized patients, for example, like already the interventions will be done, and we are just going to find out the outcome. So as a part of the research, you are not doing any intervention, but you are just taking taking their data and taking their lab results. We are and later on uh, uh, we are not going to say that this particular data is corresponding to this particular patient. So we are de-identifying the patients later on, so that they cannot be contacted, or we cannot, like when we are preparing the result, we are not able to tell like which data is of which patient. So the participants are de-identified later on. So in such studies, waiver of consent can be, the researcher may not have to do the consent with the participants. Like for example, most of the projects that we do in the hospitals, uh, they will be requiring this waiver of consent. We can apply for this waiver of consent because we are not getting any sensitive data from the patients, and we are not going to we are not going to identify the patients later on. So in such situation, we can go for this waiver of consent. Then research on anonymized biological samples or data. So anonymized, like after maybe after some a certain research, a lot of samples are there in the laboratory, and nobody knows whose samples are there. And if you want to do research on those samples or those data where we don't know whose sample is this, then in that situation also we don't have to get the consent, because we don't know which patient sample is that, but we have to get the ethical committee approval. So research on anonymized biological samples or data. Then the public health studies or surveillance program, or some program evaluation studies. Program evaluation studies means this feedback forms that you do. Like after certain programs, we are giving the feedback forms, and in that feedback forms again, we don't require the patient's um, details, like the participants' details. We just want to know how the program went. So for program evaluation studies, we are just collecting the feedback, and the feedbacks, uh, we are not going to identify who has given this particular feedback. So in such situations also, we don't have to go for this consent. So public health studies and surveillance program, maybe um, when we are going for this assessing the knowledge, attitude and practice, such studies, and how the person, like a patient's habit. So for all these studies, we don't have to get the consent. Then research on data available in the public domain. So in the public domain, maybe already published data, for example, in meta-analysis and systematic review, or what they do is a lot of public data, publication data will be there in the internet, and they are collecting all those data and doing this systematic review and meta-analysis. So in that situation also, we don't have to get the consent. Then in case of research is being conducted in any emergencies and disaster, so we in that situation, we don't have to, like we can get the waiver of consent, because at that point we'll not be like a lot of time will be lost if we are going to get the consent from individual participants. So we need the data, or we need the outcome of the study immediately, and we don't want to waste so much of time to get the consent. So in humanitarian emergencies and disasters, we can also apply for the waiver of consent from the participants. But like when we get time, we have to make an attempt to obtain the participants' consent. So these are some of the situation where waiver of consent can be obtained from the ethical committee. So there are certain researches where we don't require the consent from the participants. For example, is this public health studies, surveillance program, program evaluation studies. Then already the data is available in public domain. Then the samples, biological samples or data that are anonymized. Then retrospective studies where we are not going to identify the participants again. So in case of emergencies and disasters also, we can ask permission for waiver of consent. Then there are also certain type of research where if we obtain the consent, then that is going to affect the study result. In such situation also, we can apply for this waiver of consent. Next is reconsent or fresh consent. So reconsent or fresh consent is like already the participant has given the informed consent, signed the informed consent form, and the uh, research is ongoing. Then then at that point, if some new information pertaining to the study is available, and this particular information has got some implication for the participant uh, to uh, to be part of the study or not. So, or it is going to affect the participant. That information is going to affect the participant in one way or the other. Then a reconsent has to be obtained. Then, like in the beginning, like during the beginning of the study, the participant was unconscious, and he regained consciousness. then or a mentally incompetent person change to a mentally competent person and is able to understand the aspects of research, then uh, a reconsent or fresh consent should be obtained. Then when a child becomes adult during the course of study, then also the consent has to be taken again from the child. Then again, the research is going to have a long-term follow-up. Like maybe the research was for just like 4 to 5 years, and the intervention is done, and the data is obtained, and they want to see the long-term effect of the particular intervention. So maybe after 5 years, they want to again do some investigation on them. So if such situation turns up, then again we have to get consent from the participant. Then if any changes is, if they are going to implement any changes such as any change in treatment modality, procedures, site visit, the data collection method, or the duration of participants. So if any changes is there which is going to impact the participants decision to continue, then also they have to go for the reconsent or fresh consent. So in all these situations, a reconsent or fresh consent has to be obtained. So one is whenever new information is available about the particular agent, then a participant who was unconscious has regained the conscience, or mentally incompetent person is now mentally competent and is able to understand. Then child becoming adult. Then researchers with long-term follow-up, then or if there is any change in the treatment modality or procedures, or like whatever they were given in the, if they are any, if they are implementing any change uh, that is different from the beginning, like how it was in the beginning, then they have to obtain a reconsent. Then what has to be done after the consent process? So after the consent is obtained, the participant should be given the copy of the patient participant information sheet, where everything regarding the study will be written, and also the signed copy of the participant information sheet, and also the signed informed consent form. And if the participant is unwilling to take these documents, uh, he should not be given. But if they are unwilling, that reluctance has to be recorded. Then then at that point of time, the researcher also has to explain that whatever data is being collected will be held in confidentiality, and the original participant information sheet and the informed consent form should be archived, like as per the requirements that is given in the guidelines and regulations. So the ethical committee or the regulatory authority will be saying that the data has to be archived for a period of some years, they will say. So that specified years, they have to put this document in a careful place. So the original ones has to be stored somewhere for the specified period of time as given in the guidelines and regulations by the regulatory authority. Then special situations. We can say like, for example, if a person belongs to any particular tribe and we want to do investigation, or we want to include that person to the study, or certain group of peoples are there. So in that case, uh, we have to get the consent from the leader of the tribal leader. So they are considered as the gatekeepers. So gatekeepers are like, can be the head or leader of the any group or any culturally different appropriate authority. So we need to, in that situations, we need to get the consent from the gatekeeper first, and then also the individual participants consent also has to be obtained. So this also has to be obtained in writing or video or audio recorded. And sometimes it's maybe their rule says that not just the gatekeeper, some other persons also has to be there. Then or whatever, however it is, we have to include those people also, and we have to get the consent. Then community consent also, like similar, like in certain population, this community leader has to be there, and if that community's consent is not there, the participant may not be willing to participate. So we have to obtain the info that also maybe there will be a quorum. There will be for that committee there will be a committee. So when we obtain the consent from them, all these committee members should be present. Although that quorum fulfillment has to be done. So for example, we can see here if it is in a village panchayat. Like for any decision, this panchayat, whatever decision they are taking, there will be a couple of members. So when even for this also, that all those members must be present, and in their presence only the consent has to be taken. So the community leaders consent as well as the individual consent is also important. So these are some special situations, as you can see, where in certain tribal communities we have to obtain the consent from the community leaders, as well as maybe if a quorum is there, that quorum members, and also along with that the informed consent of the individual participant also has to be obtained. Then there is something called as consent involving deception. So there are certain types of research where we cannot disclose everything to the participants. So if we disclose some information to the participant, then the data will not be accurate or reliable. Like if you are going to study the emotions of the participants or the behavior of a participant, and if you are going to study the emotions or behavior, then uh,
ടിനി മാം ക്ലാസ് കഴിഞ്ഞോ?